We are streaming on YouTube currently. And of course, you could always subscribe to us.
Recording in progress.
Thank you, Dorothy. And hit the notification as well. And that's on YouTube. Of course, all our podcasts, all our recordings, all our interviews are on YouTube. So you could go back, from yesterday all the way back. And if you missed it, you could watch it again. All right. Yes, but welcome to Rishi. Oh, there.
All right, yeah. Should I
put on your camera? Yes.
If you have some time today to give us the poll too.
No, the poll results. I can give you the poll results.
But we called for it about 3 minutes ago and you weren't there, so we wondered.
Oh, yeah, because I was making my coffee. That's all I was doing.
Rishi, I thought you were engaged in gossip or something.
Rishi, excuse the back and forth, but I was just getting my coffee. That's all. So our poll this morning was: should the TNT? Do you think that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service can properly
arrest and reduce crime in Trinidad and Tobago?
That's it. 16 people said no. 4 people said yes. 20 people in all voted in the allotted time. So 16 of you said no, you had no confidence basically that they could. 4 people said yes, they can.
Well, a couple of months ago, the commissioner was quick to say there was no spike in crime. Then a couple of months after that, there was a concern about domestic violence situations, which was accurate, as opposed to the people thinking it's only violent crime in terms of murder and stuff like that. Now, well, there's no doubt it's a lot of gang-related stuff, and yes, domestic stuff also. But either way, the police service doesn't seem to be on top of things from where I sit.
And it's an interesting reversal, because for whatever you may like him, dislike him, you certainly are not indifferent to him in terms of the former Commissioner Gary Griffith. But for a lot of
comparisons are going to be inevitable.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, they felt more confident psychologically that he was the Commissioner of Police, and they felt that there was some inroads being made. And
love him or hate him,
yeah,
there was a sense of feeling safer, and the comparisons are going to be inevitable, whether you like him or you dislike him. And that this is something Mr. McDonald has to deal with, and the TT Police Service. And I've always said, I'm not saying the service should not depend on one person. It should depend on systems and structures that can sustainably reduce crime and solve crime and identify and prevent crime in some instances. But that's not happening.
Yep.
Not happening consistently at all. And gangs are part of it. Drugs and guns are part of it. But we've always had that here. So the question is, does the public feel that you're making inroads? And from where I sit, I don't feel that you're making sustained inroads.
Because one of my good friends just he sent me a message that basically echoes the same thing, Paul. That he says, this place is something else, yes? You move a man who was making inroads into crime, and now you're concerned about the crime situation and calling your country violent?
And that's why it should not depend on a man.
No.
See,
but sometimes
it makes a difference. Leadership is important.
A person can make a difference.
Leadership is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, leadership is important. Leadership can make a difference and be transformational and move things onto a completely different level.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Rishi, are you back? I think he was organizing his camera.
Oh, I thought he was making coffee.
He went about some makeup
and for all of our listeners, you heard how nicely he asked Rishi, "Are you back?" Instead of the tirade of abuse that I got, I was going
to say steward is tirade. It's not too.
Yeah, because I got here a little late because I was making my coffee, which, by the way, is excellent coffee this morning.
What brand are you Richard. This morning?
It's Nescafe. I mean, in the offices don't have many brands.
Well, if you are running an efficient, cost-efficient, effective office, I don't expect you to have Blue Mountain or Folgers or something like that. You use the local brand, please.
Mm. Yep.
Especially since you're a state entity, funded entity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to be splurging on mahogany that's imported from Uganda.
No, you could have it, but you need to bring it yourself.
You need to pay for it. And I'm not sure that the state of the price standing or the manual allows you to bring in your private stuff inside the office. Okay? Because you don't know how long you're going to be there.
No, but you might leave it. But I have been to a PS's office, and the PS said you want some coffee, Richard, and she had her own little coffee section. With her
You
own
can bring your own stuff, yep.
Yeah, with her own little brewed coffee. And I said, of course I'm going to have some coffee. I'm not one to refuse coffee.
Yeah, true. Eh?
So,
Why should you? Coffee is a wonderful thing.
uh,
Coffee starts your brain in the morning.
It helps. And I've had 2 hectic days. God knows, I can't talk about it on here now, but I've had 2 hectic days. 2 hectic days. If we had a tea room, I could have given it there, but I can't give it on air because there are too many Macos listening. And y'all know who y'all are. But 2 hectic days. But while we wait for Rishi to come on and solve his technical issues, I just wanted to remind people that theatre is on this weekend at SAPA, and of course we have some additional outlets. We are going through this I suppose transformation with regard to outlets, as the pet bottler would well know. So we have our outlets for South, and now we have several outlets for South. We have actually 4 outlets for San Fernando. SAPA this weekend. So in San Fernando itself, you have Fens of Marabella and by the roundabout in Marabella. So that's one outlet. In Gulf City, you have K Squared Fashions in Gulf City, which I think is pretty much opposite the B Mobile store on the upper level. And in C3 Center in San Fernando at K Squared Fashion, which is also on the upper level, we also have tickets there. So K Squared Fashions in both, it's like a K with the squared sign on the top, K Squared Fashion, both in Gulf City and in C3 Center are both outlets. And in the Chaguanas area, Creme Fresh, and it's spelled Fraiche, Creme Fresh at the Brentwood Mall in Chaguanas. That's our latest outlet, and they already have tickets. It's a wonderful store. It's a gourmet shop, and so they were very enthused in coming on board and being one of the outlets for theatre. It's always great when you have new partners with theatre. So Creme Fresh, thanks for coming on board at Brentwood Mall in Chaguanas. They also have tickets to Ladies' Room in SAPA this weekend, Saturday at 8:30 and Sunday at 6:30. We have had close to over 40 plus comments of people who are just using the words like excellent. They laugh. One woman said she laughed till she peed.
I didn't want to know who cleaned that up.
So I'm just telling you that.
Good morning, Rishi. Maharaj.
We're really having some good response. Good morning, Rishi. I was just giving you time, and so I took the opportunity to talk about my play, which you have not come to as yet, but we're in SAPA this weekend.
I have to visit. 2 years is up now, so I think it's time to now start back living life and having these experiences again.
Don't worry, it's coming back up north a week after.
All right, good.
Well, I'm not sure. But yeah. But good morning, Rishi, and welcome to the Power Breakfast Show on Power 102 Digital. We always appreciate your input.
So much to discuss.
So much. All right, let's go.
The present executive has quite a bit facing them. Let's start with Foster Cummings, Minister of Youth, I think, Youth Development, if I'm not mistaken, and many allegations swirling. And what do you think the Prime Minister, in one of the dailies today, I can't confirm, but in one of the dailies reporting, the Prime Minister saying he has full confidence in Minister Cummings in terms of the allegations being hurled at him. What do you think about this? We've had allegations against sitting ministers almost in every administration. What do you think the protocol should be? Our discussion yesterday surrounded the seriousness of the allegation and the evidence that may be supporting it or no, in terms of whether or not a Prime Minister removes a minister until his or her name is cleared, and the impact of that on their political capital.
Well, it's interesting that as a country, I mean, when we were taught, when I was in university and taught by the John Laguerres and the Dr. Ghanis and at UWE, we were always taught that we follow the Westminster model of democracy, everything coming out of England, and that, in those types of organized models, the minister has ultimate responsibility for his ministry, and obviously the prime minister has ultimate responsibility for the government. And you always thought that these types of, especially the Westminster-like model, doesn't really have, there are unofficial unwritten codes of conduct, that the way you behave and you conduct yourself when you're elected official. And one of it has been that once you have been accused of some misdoing or wrong, that you do the gentlemanly thing and you step aside and you allow the investigations and everything to go through, and then allow your name to be cleared. And then once there's no wrong, then you obviously, once the prime minister sees it fit, you come back. But like I said, that's a model that we were modeled after. Whether or not it's something that we've ever
But
done
you're
in this
saying
country.
we are modeled after that, but Prime Minister Boris Johnson was accused of breaching the COVID regulations
Mhm.
and attending a COVID party, which was subsequently confirmed, and he did not step aside, and he did not step down. And that
Right,
is the center of the Westminster system.
and that's the point that I was going to make. That although we are modeled after the way that the system how was designed to work, it's something that over the last, I would say, maybe 15, 20 years, we've started to see, at least in the UK and then Trinidad. I think it's always been like that in a way, where prime ministers don't remove someone from office until it becomes a national scandal and becomes a burden on the back of the party. My own personal view is that Mr. Cummins should do the honorable thing and resign or at least step aside. We're not saying whether he's guilty or innocent. I mean, a report has been done, the accusations have been made. Everybody has the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And he, like anybody else in the country, has the right to defend his name and defend his innocence. But I think, especially given the position and the portfolio that he holds, youth, and we see that sense of the youth in the country having a lack of trust in our leaders and those that we hold up to authority, that they should put themselves to a higher standard. I think that he should do the right thing and maybe step aside. And I think the prime minister, although I hear what the prime minister is saying, I think it's definitely something that the prime minister should do, and at least ask him to step aside while these investigations go through and he has a chance to clear his name.
If you can contextualize that part a little bit more for our audiences, for our audience, sorry, because the issue, because he's innocent until proven guilty, and I think the prime minister's narrative is indirectly and directly connected to that, in saying that, look, this is an allegation, and therefore I have full confidence in him, etc., etc. There is no provable misfeasance at this point. But what you are saying in terms of your opinion that Foster Cummings should resign, is that you're saying, as a public official, you're held to a higher standard. And even if it's not provable at this point, the mere idea that there is a element of doubt or an element of some level of an incident or incidents that can tarnish your professional image, you should step aside and work that out before you hold yourself up to office. I think that's what you're saying, Rishi. And so I want you to, if you could explain it in because this kind of conversation comes up all the time. What is people's partnership?
It's nothing new, exactly.
Yeah, it always comes up.
I mean, I remember Pandey during his tenure as prime minister said, if you have a accusation against a member of my cabinet, don't take it to me, take it to the police. The police are the ones who do the investigation. And we've had it throughout our life as a democracy, as a country, where ministers have been accused of all sorts of different things. And, the prime ministers would normally stand by them, put their weight behind them. But then that weight only goes so far until it becomes untenable, and then the prime minister has to take no choice but to eventually bite the bullet and get rid of them. We just know for the last example
But
of
then
people's
what is the
partnership with.
benchmark? Is the benchmark pending criminal charges? Because then a prime minister can find him or herself in the position in our present political climate of allegations being tossed every week. One. What is the benchmark? In this case, a former police commissioner, who is now a politician again, has said that he took a report, let me say, to the prime minister. Comparisons are being made, either erroneously or appropriately, so I haven't made up my mind yet, with the Marlene McDonald situation where allegations had been made for years.
Right.
And it's only when, on the eve of criminal charges being laid, Miss McDonald was removed. So what is the benchmark?
That's a decision that the prime minister has to make for themselves. You're right. I mean, every day you'll hear opposition parties, whoever the opposition may be, come and make accusations left, right, and center. Does that mean every time an accusation is made, you remove your minister? I think not. So the prime minister, each prime minister obviously should have a threshold. But we're talking here about, at least what I've seen in the newspapers and reported in the media, that there was a report that was done by the special branch, if I remember correctly. And that report was somehow leaked out to the media. I think I saw the commissioner of police wasn't too happy that the report was leaked, but there was an investigation done. And obviously we all agree that the investigation was done at a low level in terms of to be able to see exactly what went on or whether there was any grounds to continue some investigation. And there was, at least from what I understand in the reports, some level of accusation that the minister was involved in certain activities. So I think, given that the police investigation was quote unquote done, and there seems to be some level of, I wouldn't say truth, but accusations.
But do we know that? We don't know what is contained in the report. A report was done and handed to the prime minister. The report could have initiated further investigation, or it could have exonerated the person in question. We don't know.
Well, then why don't we make the report public?
Exactly.
And
this comes after.
Just quickly, Richard, if I was to wear, for example, if I was to wear my Freedom of Information hat, that Richard knows I wear very well, and somebody was to make an FOI request, and you want to claim, for example, national security investigations, that you can't do it, then you'll have to balance public interest, and public interest will see that you have a sitting minister that may be accused of something, and whether it's in the public interest to at least make the report public, A, or B, redacts certain types of information, but at least put the facts of the case out there for people to make their decision. It's only for right now, what we're having here is semantics in terms of, we're thinking, we're not sure. But unless you have transparency or some level of transparency, protecting, of course, parties that you would need to protect in criminal investigations, then there needs to be some level of transparency, so at least people understand what's going on and make better informed decisions. Without that, then we'll just keep talking in circles.
Well, especially if you're saying that you have full confidence in, then it means, in your interpretation of the report, is that there is no merit, or there is no substance, or there is nothing that's negative to affect your confidence in X. So therefore, there is absolutely no political harm in releasing the report, assuming that your judgment coincides properly with regard to the report and what you're saying in public.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the Prime Minister may have read the report. Prime Minister, I'm sure, may have spoken to Mr. Cummins and asked him frankly, listen, this is what it says. Tell me the truth. Don't beat around the bush. And based on those things, he may have come to his conclusion that, okay, there's nothing of utmost that scandal here. And he maintains his confidence, which is perfectly right in the Prime Minister's mind to do. But
you know what? You know what complicates this picture for the Prime Minister, Rishi? The fact that his former Minister of Agriculture and State Lands, Clarence Rambrat, did indicate pretty publicly that there were issues, and did indicate publicly that those issues were coming from a high level in certain instances. And so it feeds into that narrative that Trinidadians and Tobagonians are like, well,
something to hide.
It looks like there are several dots waiting to be connected, and you are telling me no, don't connect the dot, even though the dot right next to each other, and that's where the line looking like it's supposed to be connected. But you're saying no, you don't have to connect it. No.
And not only that, Richard, and then Minister Ambarat suddenly resigns.
Yep.
And then an announcement to spend time with his family, and then an announcement made that he's coming back in a land agency.
Yes,
It demands explanation.
it demands some again. So I go back to it demands some level of transparency. What was it that caused him to resign? Because now, at least at the time, I think I remember I was on the show where I took him at his word that he saw that the pandemic and everything, and he wanted to spend time with his family who are away and stuff like that. You take it at his word, but now you have all these other things coming out in the public domain. It demands a level of, I think, transparency on all parties, because without transparency, then you have accusations and all these things going on, and at the end of the day, the people will feed off perception and what the perception feeds for them, and then drive that or use that perception to infer what they want, whether it's right or wrong, and then use that as part of their basis in terms of whenever next election comes along, what they want to do.
I don't know if you had sight of the recent comments Karen Nunes to Shearer, in terms of all transparency, is also a contributor on this radio station. So we want to just be transparent about that. And she came under fire, and I'm using that word figuratively, from members of the PNM, because she said that there was a conversation between herself and the late Prime Minister Patrick Manning, where, excuse me, certain names were called as big business who may be involved in illegal activity, who have seemingly not been brought to justice. And because she came under fire, and people saying, well, you have no right to talk because Clico, the Norman Clico thing comes up with Mrs. Nunes Teixeira. And what do you think about that, and how that situation evolved and is evolving?
I think that members, I mean, I'm talking here from my years of living in China and hearing people talk, that a lot of people say to bring in illegal drugs in this country, it's a very big business, and it takes a lot of logistics, and you need to have a certain level of monies and expertise. And there's always been talk in the country. I mean, it's pure facts that the people involved in these things are higher up and command the economy of the country. One, and a lot of them embed themselves within the political party system through direct contributions or financing as a way to get leverage and to get cover from prosecution and to protect them from these things. I think this is nothing new that Ms. Nunes Teixeira has said, that has been put out there. I think the flack is maybe that the PNM feels, and the PNM has always been closely guarded with keeping dirty linens well within the realms of the party. And she may seem to have been now, coming out and speaking out and putting things out there in the domain that maybe they may not like. But at the end of the day, I think we need to face the reality in Trinidad and Tobago that, I actually told my wife this.
But what does the response to it tell you? Because it's interesting that, of course, the members of the party, I think Mrs. Robinson Regis, issued a statement saying Mrs. Nunes Teixeira needs to drink water and mind her own business. If Mrs. Nunes Teixeira was party to a conversation with the late Prime Minister Patrick Manning, who told her X, Y, and Z, why is it such a damning thing for somebody to be transparent? The response surprised me. I understand the questions about Mrs. Nunes Teixeira and the questions about the Clico and whether or not she should have been involved, given the fact that she had shares left by her late husband at the time, and the controversy that surrounded that. But is it that the executive thinks that, well, Mrs. Nunes Teixeira is just quote unquote bitter and raising this now to damage the party, and the transparency is not worthy at this time? If that is the case, if the statements were accurate, or is it that they think that Mrs. Nunes Teixeira shouldn't say anything unless she has proof to substantiate all allegations? I'm confused.
I think only party could answer that. I think this whole question of transparency is something that scares people, especially people who wear political ink. I always remember reading Tony Blair's biography. And Tony Blair, when he became Prime Minister in the UK, actually set up the UK's Freedom of Information Act, because their act came way after our law. And when you read his biography, he actually says in his biography that one of the worst pieces of laws he ever passed as Prime Minister was the Freedom of Information Act in the UK. Because this whole moniker of transparency and accountability, especially for political parties and political actors, is scary. They don't like it. They don't like to put information out there. They like to control the narrative. They like to control the messaging that goes out. And maybe the party feels that with Mr. Sheriff putting this out there, it gives them lack of control over what type of messaging goes out or how they want it to depict. And it paints the party in a way that they maybe don't want it to paint. And once it's out there, and you can't take it back. So that level of control that they can have over the narrative or the image of the party and how the party is going forward is something that I think any political actor is very fearful of, especially when you have people out there who may, according to them, have axe to grind. So that level of control really is fearful of them, and that's when they bite back and put out issues or put out press releases like the one that the PNM put out after Mr. Sherr's statement.
Yeah. Rishi, if we may segue a little bit to the political landscape from a broader view and look at the arrival of the National Transformation Alliance, Believe, and of course, they had a registration process where they were supposed to you're supposed to send in your name, I think, if you're interested. And I have a report, I don't know how true it is. It's, I suppose, gossip at this point, Paul. 200,000 plus people have sent in their names, etc. I don't know if that's true or not.
But you stopped gossip earlier on, though. Why are you propagating gossip now?
So, what's your take on the NTA? Of course, you have the three parties, but let's look at the two main ones that are now coming into the foray in a Trinidad context: the PDP and the NTA. And what's your take on it?
I think it's fair to say that in Trinidad, we have a large percentage of the population. I think maybe 40% of the population that just either don't vote in elections and don't find approvals in either the political parties. And that's a sizable amount of people in the population. So there is a sizable electorate out there for the PDP and the NTA to go after. I think it's from a democracy point of view, it's always healthy to have more parties because that shows a healthy democracy. I am interested, however, to see the tactics that are going to be used by those two parties to be able to get into the ground of the PNM. I think, based on what I understand, their rifles are aimed at the PNM and in making inroads into the PNM held constituencies. I think I heard the PDP is going into Laventille and doing some sort of programs and walkabouts in Laventille. So it's obvious that their guns are trained not on the both political parties existing right now, but the PNM. So it'd be interesting to see, the inroads that they can make. And although they haven't publicly stated right now, I'm sure behind back doors, alliances being made with maybe the UNC to maybe form some sort of loose alliance going into the election so that those parties could contest specific PNM areas where they can make inroads and the UNC contest the normal seats that they contest and find a way to destabilize and get at the PNM and get them out of office.
What is their opportunity? There are about 7 or 8 swing seats that we describe. Would you agree with that? 7 or 8
about 7 or 8 points. Yeah.
7 or 8 marginals.
Yeah.
The PNM and the UNC both have a core that will not leave no matter what.
Exactly.
There are, I think, 1.1 million eligible persons who are eligible to vote in the country. And there are about 200,000 who will never vote.
Yeah.
So is it that they... Sorry?
They have about 900,000 or 1 million who will vote maybe every election.
Yeah.
Depending if they want to.
Right. So is it that these new political entities, and I'll add the PDP to it because we mentioned the PDP and the NTP.
Well, I just said they were the new ones coming into the picture. The PDP has been there for a little while.
There are about 3, I guess, formidable, if you want to use that word, entrance into the scene. And is it that they have to target the marginal seats and those who've never voted and the possible ones in the PNM and the UNC who may be on the fringe? Is that their opportunity?
Right. So in Trinidad, you have to remember we have a first past the post system of elections, not proportional representation. So it doesn't matter the amount of votes that you get. If you don't win a seat, you don't get into parliament. So because of that, because of the way our electoral system is, these parties have to target specific seats that they think the majority of the support is there for them to be able to win the seat. So they have to be very strategic in the types of seats that they want to target. They also need to be strategic in the way that they're approaching the elections, because I don't think, let's use where I live. I'm in Bata, Yasawa. I'm next to St. Joseph. Obviously considered sometimes as two very marginal seats depending on how the election goes that year. It's about 1,000 votes that separates in Bata, Yasawa and St. Joseph. If you have a case where, the parties are looking at these two seats as seats that they want to target, then they're going to have to be strategic about it. And there is going to have to be an alliance, because if there's not an alliance in terms of deciding what seats you want to target, and PDP, NTA, UNC, and PNM comes into Bata, Sawa, and St. Joseph, when all those four parties are contesting these two seats, I can tell you right now that the PNM is probably going to win, because they have their core support that will never leave them. And there may be support from the other side that may move one way or the other. Let's look at what happened in 2010, I think, when COP and UNC and PNM went up against Mbata, Sawa, and St. Joseph, and the UNC lost the seat in that election. So I think although they're not saying it, there's going to have to be some backroom strategic discussions among these parties as to where they want to go. Because if all go
but
into one seat, then it's not gonna benefit their end result that they want.
But I hear you, Rishi, but I think for a lot of Trinidadians and Tobagoans, especially now, you have the younger voters, you have those that are between, let's say, 18 and 30, and then you have those of 30 and up. And I'm kind of separating them, because the higher up the ladder you go, the more jaded you get.
Yeah.
The young people may be more
Or the
uninterested.
more hardcore committed you are.
Yeah, but I'm talking about that independent group, that floating vote, that may not vote or vote because they're sufficiently irritated. And of course, you have young people who may or may not be interested in the political process at all. Those Gen Zers who may be like, well, am I interested? Should I even bother? So I hear you, and I hear you talking about alliances and stuff like that. But if you go up to that jaded group who have had the experiment, who have lived the experiment of alliances, and have come away from those alliances with a sour taste in their mouth, and they may be yearning for an alternative to the UNC and the PNM that they believe matches their interests in how they think Trinidad and Tobago should be governed and how Trinidad and Tobago should move forward. They may not be interested, that part of the electorate, with what you're suggesting. They would want a party that says, we are transformational, I'm not meaning to use the NTA's word, but they don't have a copyright on the word. They want a party that's transformational, and transformational in a substantive way that does not necessarily be about winning power and aligning itself with characters that group may find unsavory.
Do we have the data to support that? Because I think at the end of the day, it comes down to data, and it comes down to knowing the numbers for each constituency is different in the country. So you need to do your homework, and you need to have some level of understanding of it. You just mentioned the demarcating differentiations between older voters and younger voters. I think based on the recent CSO data, I think I saw, I think the large percentage of the population is between about 25, 30 and about 45, 50. That's what the large percentage of the population is. The over 60 and above is now starting to get there, but it's still not sizable. So the question is, again, like I said, we have a first past the post system. We don't have a proportional representation system. So where are the numbers for you to win these seats in these constituencies? Yes, you
Well,
may
I'm
have
just
a
saying that there's a
sizable.
constituency that doesn't want to see the recycled politicians coming back again and again.
Agreed,
And that's generally
agreed.
a lot of the times what the third parties offer.
I agree, but the question is, are they sizable enough in a particular constituency for you to win that election? Because I agree, everybody could agree there's about 300,000. I mean, average UNC and PNM together gets about 600, 600 and 605, about 700,000 votes every year.
700,000 votes.
Yeah, so let's say that. So then you have about, so you have 300 or 400,000 people who just either don't vote or don't see the enthusiasm to vote. That's a sizable number. In a proportional representation system, if you got those kinds of votes, you can have serious influence. But in a first past the post system, my argument has always been and continues to be, does that 400,000 control, if that's spread across the country, then are they sizable enough to control a constituency for you to win on your own? I think not. I think that's where we've seen the failures of the ONR in 1980, the failures of the COP, where they got sizable numbers. When you looked at the final tally, 200,000, 150,000, but they never won a seat because those votes are spread across constituencies and they aren't centered in particular heartland. So unless you can get those numbers in a particular constituency to win an election, to win a seat, to have a say, because right now the way our election is, if any of those parties could win one seat, just one seat. I mean, we know PDP and Tobago, and that's PDP may control Tobago, may not. But let's look at Trinidad. If you can control one seat, just one, then you can have a serious say in where our political landscape is now. But the question is that constituency of devoid voters who don't like what existing, are they enough in one place that you can control that and win a seat?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who do these parties' presence favor? You just mentioned PDP in Tobago. Do you think the PDP House of Assembly, when it's translatable on a national scale to the two seats in Tobago, one? And two, you mentioned Barataria Sanwan just now and the new parties, and you suggested it may favor the PNM staying in power. Why the PNM staying in power and not the UNC? Or the PNM getting into power, sorry, because the UNC now holds Sawa Barataria with Saddam Hussein.
Right. So let's go with Tobago. I think it'll be interesting to see, if the PDP can translate the election win in Tobago. I mean, it's a high that they have. Obviously, you want to ride that high, and you want to continue to use the popularity you've gotten coming out of the Tobago election. I think that has to be managed carefully, though, because the Tobago population would have voted the PDP for a specific reason, to be able to manage the affairs of Tobago and to be able to bring Tobago up to a level that they want coming out of the years of PNM ruling and feeling dissatisfied with the PNM. If the population in Tobago feels that the PDP is now looking to eye the greener grass in Trinidad to get a wider scope, and by doing that, maybe starts to neglect a little bit their home in Tobago, then that could have a problem, and that's something that they'll have to manage, very superstitious, very, very easily, because it's not something that could hurt them. It depends on how they manage it and keep Tobago and focus on Tobago while still expanding their wings. And that may mean Farley sticking in Tobago and sticking in THA, and Mr. Duke coming into Trinidad and spreading the PDP wings in Trinidad while still, maintaining Tobago waters. Why I said Barataria Sanwan and that particular thing is because I've lived here all my life. I've worked elections here all my life with the UNC back in the days when my dad was a counselor with the UNC, and I know the landscape very well. If there is more than one political, if there's not a two-horse race in Barataria Sanwan specifically, and even St. Joseph, then that core PNM support will always be there. The question is whether or not the core UNC support will always be there for the UNC, and whether the other party that's coming into the seat in Barataria Sanwan is able to pull away a bit of that support from the UNC, because and again, I speak to this from my understanding of Barataria Sanwan. The PNM support is always going to be there. It's always core, it's always support. But the UNC, and we've seen the example in 2010, when there was a three-horse race between, I think it was Mr. Ross, it was Mr. Fuad Khan, and I think Jamal Mohammed for the COP. Those were the three-horse race in 2010. No, not 2010, 2006. I think that's when the COP first came on. And in that race, you saw where the COP was able to pull votes from the UNC and Mr. Ross became the surprising winner. So it has happened, and it probably could happen again. So that's why I made the point that the PDP and the NTA needs to be strategic in the way that they go about fighting these elections. Because if all three or all four go into a particular seat to win, it could be disastrous. So I believe and I think, and I'm pretty sure that there's going to be some backroom talk, although they may not publicly come out and state it now. There is going to be, and there is going to have to be some kind of alliance in terms of the way and what seats people go at and fight.
Mr. Griffith has already said the name National Transformation Alliance is to include to champion inclusion. So I guess he's already
Looking
thinking
at
in that
Tobago.
direction.
Yeah. So again, that's what I said. I think, it's one thing that you see coming on in the foreground, and it's another thing that you see happening in the back end that you don't ever see. And I'm pretty sure these parties or these individuals are talking to one another because they must know. I mean, obviously, that if it's an all horse race, then it bodes them no well if all go into each constituency and fight each constituency. Because in the end, I think that favors the PNM more than anything else.
Yeah, the issue of proportional representation, if we may tack back to that, is it in your opinion that that's the better model for Trinidad and Tobago? I know the PNM has very consistently said that they're not interested in proportional representation. So that sort of constitutional change will not happen under a PNM administration if you hold them to what they have said historically.
Yeah, I mean, the PNM has never liked proportional representation. It's actually a paper. I remember reading that paper in UE way back in the 70s that was done by the PNM, stating the reasons why they don't support proportional representation. It's not something that they will support. I don't think it's something you'll ever get from them. Whether or not I think that's a model for Trinidad, it's something that we can look at. It's done in Guyana, obviously, but Guyana obviously has a different kind of electoral system we do. So I think I think the fact is a lot of people feel that they are unrepresented by the parties that represent them. Like I said, we have about 700,000 people who may vote in any election, 300 for the PNM and next 300,000 plus for the UNC. And then there's a sizable chunk that just don't vote because they feel neither party represents them and they feel unrepresented in the political process. If we move to a proportional representation system and it affords them the ability to get representation that they need and that they feel they deserve, then it's something maybe we can try out. But then that's a wider discussion for constitutional reform and everything else that we've been talking about for over 20-something plus years.
I don't know if you can hold because we have the news coming up and there's a couple more questions that we'd like to pose to you. Is that possible?
That may be difficult because.
Well, let me just ask a quick final question. What is the biggest challenge or what are the biggest challenges facing the present administration? You have the crime situation that is really out of hand at this time. You have the economy, the reduction of the subsidy. You have the confidence and trust issue with some executive members. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing the government?
Crime and the economy. It always comes down to crime and the economy. Crime because if people don't feel safe in their homes and people don't feel safe that they can go about and live their daily lives, then that affects them. And that affects the economy because that has a direct effect on the economy of people going out and doing things and partaking, and it affects the economy. And the economy because we're part of a global economy and we're seeing what's going on right now worldwide and the effects of that having on Trinidad and Tobago. So I think the top two things that are affecting us right now as a country is crime and the economy because they're both interlinked.
Does the public disaggregate? Well, it's happening all over the world, so we're not immune to it. Does that help the government?
No, it doesn't.
Depending on how I feel in my household, that's the way I perceive it.
Yeah,
We
politics
look
are
at it-
local.
we look
All
at it
politics
in-
is local. That's
we
what
look
they say.
at we always look at it individually. If I can't go and spend money to feed my children, or prices are becoming high, then it affects me. I understand, and people may understand. We may argue, well, it's global. Every part in the world feeling this, and every part of people feeling this. But I think individuals look at it from my individual perspective, and if it affects me individually, it's going to affect me the way I see and do things, wholeheartedly.
Given what you've seen, let me put you in your hot seat. Do you think the non-renewal of Gary Griffith's contract was a mistake?
I think it was. I'll give you a different way, and it may be different. I think it was planned tactical, and they know he would have come out in the political realm, and maybe they want him more in the political realm where he could be attacked more than being a commissioner of police.
I wish we had more time to dive into that, but we have you back.
Yeah, because you
Continue.
open a Pandora's box there,
Pandora's
yeah,
box there.
and then say, okay, I'm gone.
Politics is a chess game. You need to think four steps ahead. So I think it was, yeah, I think it was tactical. That's just my thing on it.
Rishi, thanks a lot, man. We appreciate
No
it.
problem.
Thanks a lot. All the best. All right, of course, that was
Recording
Rishi
stopped.
Maharaj. Let's get into our news brief, all courtesy Champlain Auto Services.
This is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.
A massive land, air, and water surge that was launched yesterday continues